So, James, I'm in, but I don't see Jack yet. You want me to bring him on? Want me to introduce him? Got it. All right, guys, welcome to Salty Ginger Talk. Thank you for joining our live stream tonight. We have a familiar face for you Salty Ginger subscribers and regular listeners. Jack Glennon is rejoining us tonight. He's joining us from Australia. Glennon Peak Coaching is his business. Go back and listen to his story because the route that he traveled to get to where he's at now is crazy. One of the crazier stories that we've heard. Overcame significant health challenges. Jack is a great guy, and we're going to have a great conversation tonight. So let's bring him in. There he is, Mr.
Hi,
Glennon.
Great to see you.
Yeah, how you been?
I've been very well. I'm not sure if it's too late to say Happy New Year, but I'm going to say it anyway.
It's never too late to do something celebratory, right? It's always going to celebrate.
Great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, so long as we don't lose focus on what we're driving towards.
100%.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I was telling the listeners before you came on to go back and watch your episode because your story is super amazing, super interesting, and all of the health challenges that you overcame and the life that you've built with your wife. And we're just going to have a great conversation. So really appreciate you coming on.
It's my pleasure. It's definitely something I've been looking forward to. It's a nice way to start my Friday morning. So that's great.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about this platform and the technology is that, we're 13 and a half hours apart, literally on opposite sides of the globe, and we're able to have these great interactions and great conversations with each other. So really appreciate that. And, we do the live stream like a little different. The interview is kind of focused on the guest, and we just kind of, shotgun topics on the live stream. So I'll actually turn it over to you. Is there anything that's going on in Australia or in your life or anything that you feel strongly about that you want to talk about right now?
Ooh, where do you want to go?
That's what I do. It's up to you, man.
It's been a big week in Australia. For those that don't or aren't familiar, so we just had what's called Australia Day. So that was earlier this week. And Australia Day is a celebratory day from some people, where people celebrate. It's not an Independence Day, but it's the landing of the start of Australia as a nation. For some people, other people are very against it because it's the start of colonization and the challenges there. It's a very divisive week. It's probably echoing in terms of different nations around the world, yours included. It is very divisive in terms of pride of a nation versus the origins of a nation and, the different viewpoints. And again, they're very, unfortunately, it's very indicative of the society we're in at the moment is there's not able to be a healthy conversation there. It's just anger and it's just war and it's just abuse. My wife and I on Monday, which was Australia Day, we avoided the city because we knew there were going to be lots of protests opposing each other and just carnage, which happens everywhere. And I know obviously that's happening a lot over the US as well.
Yeah, that's super interesting. In America, that what you just described is Columbus Day for us. So it's the October 10th, 11th, the first, second Monday in October. And for a long time, it was a celebration of Columbus landing in America, which is funny because he never did. He actually landed in the West Indies, but New America existed at that point. So he never actually came to America. But then it became Indigenous People Day, and all of the folks that lived here before. And look, those are real issues. Totally get that. However, there's a lot that gets left out of that story from my perspective. There were all sorts of different Native American tribes that lived in the United States, and they regularly fought each other and took each other's land and took hostages and slaves from those battles. And so this narrative that the colonization of America started warfare and discord between, it's just false. Like, it's just false. There's a lot to be said that, yeah, white people came here and took over. There's just no two ways about it. And we did some really shitty things when we did it too, by the way.
Yeah.
More than one thing can be true at the same time. It's one of the things I think about Salty Ginger Talk for all the people we have on is we can all have reasonable conversations about that. It's funny you bring that up because I actually just booked an intro call with a woman who is First Nations. There's different ways people refer to indigenous people in the United States. First Nation is one of them. And she's a First Nation member, so she's a descendant of a First Nation tribe. And she's written several books on the subject. I want to hear what she has to say. I'm not bringing her on with her or to have any type of confrontation with her. I want to learn from her. And who knows? Maybe I'll agree with everything she says. Maybe I'll agree with nothing she says, but I can guarantee I'm not going to get an argument with her because I just want to hear what she has to say. And
it's that willingness to be open because there's two extremes. And I saw two examples. I'll give you two examples of extremes from the process that I just saw on the news, if anything. I saw one example of, people wanting to protest against Australia Day, for example, and burning the Australia flag, which is only going to incite anger and resistance, right? The conversation around should that day be a day of celebration when so many generations have suffered and it hurt, and the day was a colonialization and horrific things were done. That's a discussion that should be had about, okay, what can we do to make this work for everybody? Where can this discussion? But that behavior, and also the same thing the other way, is you're seeing a lot of people for sort of, I guess, the whiter Australians, I guess, in terms of that national pride, going the other extreme and going, right, well, we need to be, focusing on immigration, and that's that lens there. Again, they're just two very, very opposing, not willing to actually have a conversation, which is very challenging because it's very, again, I come back to it, it's very indicative of the sort of social, political landscape we're in the middle. If you're in the middle, you're kind of villainized either side. You can't have an opinion and go, actually, you've both got a couple of different points here. Where can we have a discussion where not necessarily we can agree to disagree, and that's okay, but where can we get a result? That's almost no longer an option. It's either this or that.
Yeah.
Which is really challenging because people are going to have different opinions. And I was talking to someone recently about it, actually, someone I was sort of reconnecting, and they were talking about sort of their history, and they were saying, look, this is my truth. And that's really important. Their truth might be different to my memory, but I have to respect that truth. I can disagree with it and go, well, actually, I remember it slightly different, or my perception is different. But going down the line of you're wrong, so I'm going to just concentrate on trying to prove you wrong, actually doesn't help. And unfortunately, I think that's the environment that we're in. And I see this in businesses as well, of this is my idea and I'm right. And that's the way we're going to go. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, hang on, there might be other ways. Just be open to it. It might be the best way, but let's open it up and go, well, be open to being vulnerable and not necessarily being the most intelligent person in the room.
Yeah, so I love that. It's something you do on a regular basis because in your coaching business, you coach to kind of help people grow their businesses and grow their careers. And you do a lot of things around leadership and management in a healthy and productive way. So what we just talked about, what we just described, and look, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I can tell you, I think you've heard me say it, it's too bad you didn't know me when I was 20, because when I was 20, I was so fucking smart. I knew everything. You didn't even have to ask me. I would tell you I knew everything. That's how smart I was. I just knew I knew everything. And it turns out, I'm in my 50s now and I've gotten really stupid. It turns out I don't know nothing. And there's all sorts of people out there that know all sorts of things, and they're willing to teach it to you for free if you'll just ask a couple of questions and then shut your mouth. But how do you teach people to go through that profession? Because I think not only will it help you in your professional life, but you can use it to manage relationships with your spouse, with your children, if you have, with your family members, with your friend group. How do you teach them? How do you teach people to back away from positions and focus on solutions?
Great question. I'll tackle the family one because I'll very quickly, because my wife and I, we've got a fun sort of dynamic because of what I do, I guess. So everyone has bad days, right? Everyone has struggles with their, the work life, or, my boss was a real pain in the ass today, or whatever it might be. So when she's had a bad day or, going through a tough time, I'll go to her first. I'll go, do you want me to listen or do you want me to coach? So which one do you want? So I know the boundaries, right? So we're, having dinner, and I'll go, before you start, which one of me do you want? And she'll go, no, I just want you to listen. Absolutely. Hubby hat is on. I'll listen. And she sometimes goes, but later on, I might want your opinion. Okay, cool. Just let me know. Then I'll sort of slide into that mode. And it's really interesting. You bring up sort of opening people's minds up to growth. And I'll give you a couple of examples, which are quite funny. I one guy I met with, I think it was back in October time. He was a salesman. And he hadn't been doing the sales job for too long, but he'd been getting really, really good results. And my task was to try and coach him on EQ, emotional intelligence, because he didn't really know what it was or hadn't experienced it, and he wanted to grow. And I'll tell you a line that he said to me the first time I spoke to him, was challenging him to kind of open his head up. He literally went, well, Jack, to be honest, I'm 90% brilliant. And, that 10%, there's professional athletes and the Michael Jordans of the world. That's the 10% they go to. And I really can't be bothered. And I sat there and took a moment and went,
love his confidence. You got to love his confidence.
Got to love your confidence. And I went very quickly in my mind. I had to think and go, okay, if I try and fight fire with fire here, because there were certain things that he was doing that weren't great, I'm just going to get a wall. So I'm going to try and navigate round and get him to see what he wants to go to next. So where does he want to go to? And he wanted, his next position was, in his mind, he should be a manager tomorrow. That was it. I've been doing sales for a few years and I'm getting the best numbers, quote unquote. And I went, okay, my role here then is to get you potentially ready for leadership. He's like, oh, that would be great. It's like, cool. So what does leadership look like to you? And he basically read out what his mind, a colonel, would look like in the army.
Mm.
You do this, 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 and then we go to war. Like, interesting. Why do you think that is? He said, well, that's just how I work. I want people to tell me how it is, and then I go and do it. I'm like, okay, so, and we worked on this, and basically it was all around him thinking differently. And I'm encouraging to trial approaches with some juniors in the team that he was in, because he wasn't being a leader in the team even without the title. So over a period of time, it was him trialing different methods within his own role, but rather than the title, I'm now the manager, it's no, be a role model. You can be a leader without the title, and let's see how people react to you then, because he was getting very frustrated doing it his way and just getting resistance. So that was one example. Another example is a client of mine who I love to bits. She's brilliant. She's got such a good heart. And I met with her about 3 weeks ago, actually. And I said, so how's things? She went, oh, actually, everything's pretty all right. I haven't got too much to discuss. And I literally asked her 2 questions. And in 2 questions, it was blah. In terms of, oh, well, this has been going on, and this has been stressing me out, and I really don't know about this. And so sometimes it's knowing the person and reading them and going, what's going on behind the veil? And I think a really important part of how I approach coaching, and I think this is an industry that doesn't necessarily get it right, in my opinion, is I'm a big believer it's got nothing to do with me. It's all about them. I'm here to understand, uncover, pick the lock, if you want to use those sort of buzz terms, and guide them on where they want to go next. And sometimes challenge their thinking and challenge their approach and go, what you're doing right now isn't working, so why do you continue to do it? Let me frame something up for you. But it's very much more about them. If I've sat down with a client and they're going, I don't really need help. Great. I'd love some more appointments. It's paying the bills. For me, it is a business, but I'm never going to just take someone's money and sit there and go, well, this is fun. This is kind of a waste of everyone's time. So it's very much, they get out of it as much as they put in. And unfortunately, the coaching industry, from what I've seen, is a lot of coaches who it's more about them.
Yeah.
They're the big personality. They've got to be the biggest voice. It's lots of, pizzazz and shazam and, high production value. And so we've got a 12-step program in 12 weeks to guarantee you this. And I just want to go bang. Yeah. To be honest, when I see those, I get why they do them, because they're a money-making machine, because people do want a quick fix and they do want that promise, but they're not sustainable. It's like, I attribute it to, if someone wants to lose weight, well, here's a pill that's going to help you lose weight tomorrow. Cool, I'll take the pill, I'll lose weight tomorrow, but what happens afterwards?
Right.
Well, then you're just going to gain the weight on again. And that's kind of the comparison that I give to it.
Yeah, I love that. And, I hear the phrase, treat people the way you want to be treated. Well, that's false. That's just wrong. That's not true. And I'm a good example of that, because I am painfully straightforward and direct. I like it when people are painfully straightforward and direct to me. Like, I went through college on a baseball scholarship, so there's no ambiguity in sports. You did a good job, you didn't do a good job, and there wasn't a lot of coaches that were there to coddle you or make you feel good. It was, you didn't get it done. Here's what went wrong. You either change it, or that guy behind there waiting to take your spot, he'll change it. And so, like, you didn't get to feel sorry for yourself. You didn't get to cry in your beer. You didn't get to have a pity party. It was either make the change and move forward, or you're done. Next guy up. And that works really well for me. Now, how many people would you think what I just described that would work well for? By the way, it's almost nobody. Almost nobody. I always say the truth is like poetry, and most people fucking hate poetry.
So I love that. I love that example. Yeah, and you're right. It's unfortunately, and you alluded to it before in terms of leadership, there is a scary lack of leadership skills, I think, in the market, in all sorts of different industries. And that's not me judging anybody specifically, because they're not given the training.
That's right.
I see it everywhere. I see it in the hospitality industry. Cool. We're going to put, you're great at making cocktails, so we're going to make you the bar manager. They've got no clue about people management, conflict resolution, time management, all these sorts of things. They're not trained. No clue. Absolutely nothing. But you're great at making cocktails, so you're our bar guy. You can run the bar. And I think of an example of another client of mine who's an operations manager for a relatively large group. And he's struggling with one of his venue managers. He's got a very big ego. And the venue manager's quite young, but big ego, can't do anything wrong. And he keeps on making these mistakes by just making decisions which are outside his remit. And the operations manager is getting very, very frustrated and keeps biting back, and they clash. And in a very quick conversation with the ops manager, I went, have you ever asked him why he's making these decisions? He said, why? What does that matter? I've just got to stop him from behaving like whatever it might be. Like, no, I understand that, but do you know why he's doing it? No, it doesn't matter. And I kept on challenging him, going, next time, rather than just spraying him and having a go and going, you're doing this, because that's your style, because you're a bit, shouty, can we say? I'm being gentle. Instead of that, ask him, just so I can help you, how did you get to the decision to do that? What went through your head? What was the thought process that made you decide to do X, Y, Z? And if you get defensiveness, because the dynamics that you two are in, repeat the question. You've got to seek to understand how his brain is working, that he's getting to these decisions. Because then if you can stop that, then the behavior itself won't occur. But these skills, these thought processes are so foreign to many, many leaders, because they're not given the information, they're not given the guidance, or they're given the wrong guidance. And there's a big split of generational type of leadership, and you've seen it yourself, in terms of that more direct, versus, I've spoken to some owners who are really struggling with their workforce because they're having to, fight with their employees to explain why they should turn up on time.
Yeah.
Simple.
And you've got to find ways to mesh those things together. So my wife and I are a good example of that. We've been married for 32 years, and she is by far the most emotionally intelligent person I've ever met, which seems like a really bad match for a real direct jerk like me, you know? But I place so much confidence in her ability to read people and relate to people. And she has taught me so much because I'm willing to listen and learn and admit, hey, I suck at this. You're awesome at it. You could teach me a lot of things. And so I've incorporated her tools and techniques into my direct approach. Because one thing I always encourage people, you got to be who you are. If you're disingenuous, if you try to pretend to be a way that you're not, people will see it instantly and you'll lose all credibility with it.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, literally. However, you can do it in ways like you talked about. So like, I don't like the phrase, help me understand, because I feel like that's patronizing and condescending. But there's value in that phrase. But if people don't receive it the right way, they're not going to share what you're asking them to share. So what I've learned to do is say, just walk me through this. Just walk me through the sequence of events so we can problem solve it together. When I say it that way, I get all sorts of collaboration. Hey, this guy actually wants to help me fix problems. Like, I'm in, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Instead of fighting fire with fire, you're breaking those walls down and going, look, I'm not here to ride you all the time. I'm not here to make your life more difficult. I'm here to actually help you and make you better. I will quickly pull you up on one point. I think you undersell yourself on your emotional intelligence. One key element of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. And I think to your defense, Joe, I think you're very, very good at that.
Well, so that's fair. I know who I am. I've always known who I was. And there's a lot of value in that. I've never like, I knew I was never going to be a poet or a therapist or a ballerina. You know what I mean? those career tracks waved bye-bye to me a long time ago. And I love people that are creative like that. I love excellence in all of those fields. I'm just not good at them. I don't have the innate desire to become good at them. I just appreciate the experts when I see them. That's how I partake in those kind of things. But you're right, like knowing who you are. There's an interesting conversation to be had around that. You shot me an email about this. So both Jack and I are married. I have 3 kids. Jack and his wife have consciously decided not to have kids. I would love to hear that how you and your wife came to that decision, why you feel that way, and just your thoughts on that subject overall.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting subject. Again, it can be quite divisive, depending on who you're talking to. We come across people quite often they go, oh, do you have kids? And we go, oh no, and they go, why? It's a foreign concept. Why not? I think I'm a big believer that there are people that, if they have kids, they're doing it for the right reasons, and they're going to be brilliant, and you can see a mile away they're going to be brilliant parents, right? And I know people that have said, oh, we're pregnant, I'm going to be like, oh my, wow, you're just going to be brilliant, and I'm so stoked for you. There's also a lot of people that you go, why are you having kids? You don't have the financial support, you don't have the structure, you've known each other for 6 months. Are you kidding me? Because I think, unfortunately, and this isn't a generic thing, I'm not going to throw this out to everyone, and this is no mean to offend anyone either. A lot of people have kids for the wrong reasons. They have it because of them. Not, am I bringing up this child, this being, to have the best environment for them? For us, we had an early discussion, I think even before when we got engaged. And my wife was very much, look, just so you know, this is my stance. I don't want kids. And for us, I think it's almost internal. You've got that paternal and maternal drive, or you don't to a certain degree. And it's something that neither of us have. We're both very passionate about, living our lives as much as we can whilst we're here. We both live in Australia. We're both, not originally from here. I'm from the UK originally. She's from America originally. So we've gone our own paths, if you like, from normal traditional family dynamics, which takes a lot in itself to step away from that. And our relationship, I think, is so strong because we are independent at the same time. A lot of more traditional relationships are more dependent. There's very sort of degrading, I think, sentences like, oh, the ball and chain, the old missus, I want to go for a drink with the boys on Friday, but I got to ask the missus if she's, if I'm allowed to. I think, I know that's sometimes very traditional, but I think that's really unhealthy. Why are you asking your partner for permission to do something? Obviously with boundaries and, respect and health, that sort of thing. But we've got our own independent lives and we come together at the same time. There are times where in the past where we've wanted to take holidays that the other person does want to. For example, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. I think I mentioned that on our podcast.
You did.
She had zero interest in doing that whatsoever. And if we were in that heavily dependent relationship, I would have never done that. I would have never have experienced one of the most mentally and physically challenging things I probably ever will. And I'm a big believer life's for living. I do think we get it once. That's my personal belief. Whether what happens after, I don't know. There's all sorts of different possibilities, but I know equally through my health issues that it could be gone tomorrow. And whilst we can never, the idea of I want to live today is it's the last day of my life, the reality of that day-to-day life makes that very tricky. Because we do have to pay bills and go to work and go and buy the groceries and do the laundry and the ironing and the practical things we have to do. But where I can maximize my life, I want to go and achieve that. And I think having kids, I see a lot of close friends who have kids of mine, and I love them dearly. And there's never a judgment on them because they're very happy, they've made their life choices. But a lot of time they're generally exhausted, broke, and sometimes pretty miserable. They love their kids and love their family, and that's their choice, but it's a really difficult one. And for us, it's a life choice to go, that's not for us. And I know the flip side is, what happens when you get older and you want someone to look after you. I'm also disagreeing with that. I don't think it should be a child's responsibility to look after a parent when they get older.
Hey, don't tell that to my kids, though. I agree with you, but don't tell them.
And that might be divisive, but because a lot of people do think, we are parents, we bring you up for 10, 15, 20 years. Well, we owe it in return when we're older. I completely disagree with that. I think that's completely unfair. And that's, when I'm old and, I'm able to walk, and I've told my wife, I'm like, I plan to go before you do. I'm sorry. But, it's fine, so, we've both got family around the world. I've got nephews, she's got niece and nephews, and we love them dearly. But, we've also kind of, because we're a bit different, with a kind of weird, cool auntie and uncle that go scuba diving and go traveling and live our own sort of life here in Australia. And the same thing with some of my friends, catching up with some really close friends of mine. We go away for a weekend and they go, I can relax for a bit. It's their sort of escape, which is lovely. And I'm happy to be that person. But for us, we love animals. It's something my wife will probably not mind me saying that she's a sort of typical crazy cat lady. She loves cats, but if it was down to her and we were millionaires, we'd have a farm, probably with all the rescue animals in the world, Joe, honestly. So it's not that we're sort of cold-hearted people that hate children. It's just the stereotypical societal expectation of you should do this, you go to school, you go to college, then you get together with someone, you get a house, you get kids. It's not that simple. And my question is why? If that's not what's right for the child, if you don't want kids mentally or emotionally, if you've got a full life, you don't want to give up the things in your life, then it's not right for you. It's not, and that shouldn't be judged or frowned upon. It should be just as acceptable. I think I went to dinner with some friends recently. We were talking a little bit about kids, and how in the workplace often, when someone has a kid, it's like the whole world stops. This person's had a kid and isn't amazing. It's the most special thing in the world. And again, this is probably a controversial thing to say, but actually having a child is the least special thing in the world. I'm sorry if that offends anyone, but it's special to the individual. Completely not denying that, because I can't imagine, it's a different form of love and everything like that. But actually, it's the most normal thing.
Just for all the feminists out there, we'll have Jack's email down in the show notes.
Look, that wasn't it? It was to males and females.
Yeah, look, all kidding aside, I'm with you. Like, I get like celebrating graduating from high school, but like, aren't you kind of supposed to? Like, you're supposed to graduate from high school. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be happy about it. You shouldn't recognize the passage into adulthood. However, I graduated high school. I got a college degree. Congratulations. There's fucking millions of us. Like, I get it. And look, I have 3 kids. And I remember vividly the details. And these, my oldest son is 31 and the youngest one is 26. And I can remember like the days all 3 of them were born. With that said, I never had a burning desire to have children. Never. Neither did my wife. It's funny because we got married we were very young when we got married. I was 21 and my wife was 19. Wow. And we got married in a Catholic church. And for those that understand the Catholic Church has been anti-birth control for centuries. And our priest told us, hey, you guys could use some birth control. You're pretty young. And, you don't cloud this scenario with the kid. And, of course, my wife got pregnant 3 months after we got married. She swears it's mine. We never had to test it. It does look a lot like me, so I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. But I love my kids, and I wouldn't want a life without them. But I could have seen a path where my wife and I were very happy without kids. Yeah. I think it's one of those things that once you go down that road, like there is no other version that would have made you as happy as you are now because you know what you know. I don't think it is the prescription for happiness for everybody. I'm with you on that. As a parent who loved and still, I loved being a parent. I love having adults. So mine are all sons. And so I get to spend a lot of time with them now. It's fun because now we're at the point where they call me old man and give me a bunch of shit. And, I taught them to be independent and say what they think. And I'll be damned if they didn't do exactly that,
Yeah. And I, like I said, I've got some, I see some photos and talking to friends, and they have some great experience. They're absolutely devoted parents. And that's the path that's right for them. I think to kind of go full circle, it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's just it's your life. It's as long as it doesn't upset or hurt or offend, to a certain degree offend everyone, because that's quite tricky not to do these days. It's your path to walk, and it should be the same as your truth. It should be respected. And yes, it might be different and a bit odd. I was talking to someone the other day, and they very much went, I've experienced not having kids, so I know what that's like. And now I have kids, whereas you don't know what that's like to have kids. So you can't really understand. I'm like, to a certain degree, I get it. And I agree with you that I can't understand fully what it's like to have a child and see it born into the world. But your version of not having kids was when you were early 20s.
Yeah.
Or in your 20s, when you were still working out who you were and not really earning much and not having the financial or the physical freedom to maximize your life, which comes in time. So again, it's not about what's right or wrong. I think you touched on something that's, again, potentially a bit divisive, but an important element of kids or not, and that is religion. Religion plays a huge part in that. We've seen over and obviously in the States, abortion laws come in, into different states around the country. That's going to have an impact on people having kids or not, whether they want to or not, which opens up a whole different dynamic of challenges.
That's an interesting. There's a couple of interesting topics there. We've got both religion and abortion. So if we're going to read into it, let's just do it, right? Let's start with religion. So I have a very kind of unique position. I'm not religious at all. Never have been. Even though I just said I got married in a Catholic church, I did that because my wife wanted to get married in a Catholic church, which was fine with me. However, I do think that most of the morality and tenets that we have developed as people have come from the tenets of religion. My big challenge with religion is, in my mind, there are two institutions that are responsible for more bad and evil things in the world than any two others. One is religion, and the other is government. And when they get perverted because some people take them down a road or too extreme, you can get a lot of people to buy in the name of religion, in the name of the greater good as it relates to government. And that part's concerning to me. But I think you can trace a lot of the challenges we have in our society in America back to the movement away from religion in the 60s. And people need some kind of structure. And I think that's why you see so many people clinging to, and I've never been a registered member of either the Republican or the Democratic Party. So I have too strong of opinions and feelings on specific subjects that run counter to the basic platforms of those parties to be a part of either one. But I understand why people want to be a part of those groups because it gives them an identity. It gives them a crowd. I'm with these people. It's the same reason sports are popular, right? So I'm a huge New England Patriots fans, and they're in the Super Bowl. Again,
Yes.
after they were terrible for 5 years, they're back. That's right, baby. The evil empire is back. But that's it. You can commiserate with other people. Like you share something in common with me, and that's like being in the same clan 100,000 years ago, you know? And with the movement away from organized religion, I feel like there's been bad things like you'll never see a vacuum in nature. So where there is no structure or leadership, something will come in and fill that void. And if you're not careful, it can be something bad. That's my take on religion. I'm for it, but I don't practice it. But I think you got to be real careful about what you think about it and how you practice it. But I'd love to hear your take on religion because I think it's different than mine.
I've got there's elements I agree with you, definitely. You know, we look in history, the amount of wars that have been fought over religion, the amount of people that died in the quote unquote name of God, for example. You know, you look at the mass shootings that occur, unfortunately far too often, especially in the States. And often it's a religious divisive situation. We had one similarly in Sydney recently, and that was focused on religious distinctions. The concept of believing in something, I think, or having faith in something bigger than us, we're searching for purpose all the time. I think it's part of who we are. And I completely agree with you in terms of that sense of belonging. You know, that's a human nature to want to belong to something. I think where religion is very dangerous is it becomes an intrinsic belief that we cannot waver from, that we cannot go outside of these two walls no matter what is shown in front of our eyes. And that's virtually on the term of cult, which is very, very dangerous, I think, in that sense. And, you know, if you look into lots of religions, they are often very, very contradictory in terms of their text, in terms of their messaging. And the problem with, if you're discussing religion, is that it comes back to right or wrong again, because it's a structured, I believe in this and that's all. I'm not open to ideas. I'm not open to, well, what if? We talk about, we touched on abortion, and you can get people who are very religious and believe in, heaven and a hell and angels and a God and a devil and all that sort of stuff, but go, no, I'm completely against abortion. Sorry, I'm completely for abortion. I want to have control of my body. And that goes completely against that religion. So it's picking and choosing when it suits to a certain degree, which is really challenging, I can imagine. My other big issue with religion itself is quite often the individual isn't given a choice. And what I mean by that is, based on where we are born on this planet, quite often we grow up in that religion, in that society. So if you are born in, say in America, it's probably going to be Christian. If you're born up in the Middle East, it might be Muslim. If you're born somewhere else, it might be Sikh or whatever it might be. And that is a challenge, because you're brought up to intrinsically believe what you are told by your parents or your family, not to go, okay, I'm going to grow up with ideas around me. And as ideas form as I grow up, I'm able to form my own opinion without judgment. And that's really important, the without judgment. It can divide people and divide families. And, I know of, a few people around the world that they just, and you probably see it on TV. I actually watched a movie not too long ago, and the term was, you walk into a bar, no politics, no religion. And I'm going to put politics to one side, but religion can be, when it's a faith thing, when it's bringing people together, that sense of belonging for the good morality reasons, to help thy neighbor, to support other people, to give people love and belief and a place of belonging, is brilliant. But unfortunately, it's so fueled with division that, I want to say hatred, but that might be too strong. But a misunderstanding of the other side supersedes the good quite often. Again, we look over history, hundreds of years of wars and all sorts, and even today, conversations around, we're doing this because, I watched a clip of something random. Someone took a lie detector test on something, and it was proven to be that the person was lying, and they were lying about something quite heinous, and they lost their temper and went, "If this is just a machine, I don't believe in it. As long as God and Jesus Christ, they know the truth, they know I'm not lying." And scientifically, the person's lying, but they justify their behavior through religion, and that's where it can be dangerous. Quite often people, I love the fact you touched on morality, and morality is really important. The right and the wrong, supporting one another, loving one another. But unfortunately, because we're not perfect as a entity, human beings, more often than not, religion is the justification for wrong behaviors, for division, for racism. That's probably a massive one, right? And that's what I have a big issue with it. I'm not religious. I have great issue with a lot of the beliefs that I don't believe are ethically right. And there's so many contradictions in the texts that I've read, because I did actually, ironically, out of curiosity, when I was younger, I studied theology, because that had a big ethics section in the actual subject itself. I'm like, that's really interesting. But it also had the Gospel of St. John, which my thesis was to basically dissect the whole gospel. And the amount of contradictions that I found throughout it, I wasn't very popular with the professor. but I was like, well, I can't remember the details, but this line says you do this, and then you turn 100 pages, and then it does this, and that's two very opposing things. So explain that to me. And he couldn't. And he wasn't willing to either. And that's the problem with religion, is it's going back to when we first started, it can't be a discussion because it's my belief, and a belief system is rock solid, and it can't be changed, it can't be altered. And that mindset is dangerous.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I always say, anytime someone tells you this is the only option, you should be like really concerned about whatever it is you're dealing with. Because that's almost I rarely make global statements.
And it's respect, Joe. It's respect thing. I think with religion, and we see it so often, if you don't believe in what I believe, I'm going to change you. There are religions who, and again, this isn't meant to offend anyone, but the Mormon, for example, religion, their foundation is going out and conversion.
I'm laughing because I saw, are you familiar with the Babylon Bee? They make satirical articles and satirical headlines. They had a headline that my wife read to me the other day that said NASA lands astronauts on Mars and they're met by Mormon missionaries when they get
and it's satirical, but it's a great example. But that morally, to me, ethically, is so unbelievably wrong, because I respect your belief. I don't, with the nicest possible way, I don't care what religion you have. I could give two hoots. I will respect you if you're a good person to me and I'm a good person to you and we get on and we click, whether, we could be related or not related. But if you're if you're a positive impact in my life and vice versa, couldn't give a damn what your religion is. But don't try to change me. Don't try and change my religion or convert me because you think, again, it comes to because you think you're right. Because if you try to do that, then I'm equally entitled to go, well, no, this is my opinion. And that's just not healthy, because that's the challenge with religion. If you have an idea and you want to give me your idea and try and change my mind, absolutely, then we can have a conversation because we're open. But a religion is, no, this is the gospel, this is the word, this is how we're going to do it, and you're wrong, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're wrong, and you're a horrible person for being wrong. And that's so morally wrong in my opinion, and it's not right. And if there was, my belief is there probably was someone in this world, probably called Jesus, who was an exceptional human being, and people followed him, and was very, very unique. But if that person existed, they'd be horrified with some of the things that are done in their name. They'd be horrified with what governments do in their name, and the behaviors and there's different entities that we have created.
Yeah, I just don't think it's anyone's place to judge anyone else. I mean, I think there's certain behaviors that are beyond all of us, molesting children, domestic abuse, rape. Those are just wrong. They're always wrong. They're never going to be right. I don't need a book to tell me that. I know it's wrong, just like it's wrong. But I'm not judgmental. That's why I'm able to relate to so many people, because I genuinely want to hear what they think. Because, like I said earlier, I was so smart when I was young. I knew everything, and now I realize I'm an idiot. I might be thinking about it wrong. I might be missing a big something that I could learn from somebody who thinks differently than me if I'm willing just to listen to what they say. I can absorb the information. I can process the information. I can decide if I agree with it or not. I can decide if I want to incorporate it into my worldview going forward or not. But I feel like I'm better off for at least having the information. So I don't judge people. It's not my place to judge people. Like on the podcast, I have people on who are empaths. So I have people on who see other people's issues. Maybe they can. I can't. None of those things apply. But maybe they can. I don't know what their experience is. And so I just listen. I have 2-hour conversations with people who experience and or think things completely different than I do. And they're respectful. And I learn a ton. And I've yet to have a controversial moment on the podcast, even though we talk about controversial stuff like religion. Like we can.
And the difference there is it's a conversation, isn't it, Joe? It's
That's
a conversation, and I'm happy to learn. I don't know that any. If someone wanted to tell me more about the Quran, for example,
yeah,
no idea. But I've heard the art in it's beautiful. Some of the words that some of the poetry in there is beautiful, and more great. Happy days. I'd be interested, because again, more knowledge is growth in many ways. However, and this is again where religion is often manipulated or used in the wrong way. If someone was to go, I'm going to take you through the Quran because you're a heathen and you need to convert to Muslim, for example, not calling any religion, that's different, which often is the case with religion as a concept.
Yeah,
and as I was saying before, we don't get a choice,
right?
Say again.
I'm a heathen, but that's not even.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Yeah, I've had conversations with someone. I remember years ago with someone go, I love you as a person. You're really cool, but I do think that you're going to hell. Cool, but that's fine.
Never know. Might see it there.
Yeah, but at the same time, as I said before, a lot of this it's based on where we're born. If you're born in an environment that's Muslim or Sikh or Christian, that's going to be your belief structure, which doesn't make sense. It's not logical that, just because you're born in America or UK or somewhere in Africa or whatever it might be, that means you're right, because that religion's there in the planet. And therefore, when you're born somewhere completely different than the planet, that's wrong. That's not even logical.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Again, there's structure that religion can bring to people that are searching for it, which I think is good.
Yes.
But you've got to be very careful about how you apply that to your life and how it impacts your thought process. That's kind of my take on the whole thing.
And if your mindset around it drives that, if your mindset is open to different ideas, different perspectives, it's not about being right or wrong. It's going, I believe there's this, but you don't, and that's okay, and I respect that. And that's, a healthy conversation, great. But unfortunately, a lot of people who are heavily religious don't have that perspective. Yeah. And we see that now in governments and all sorts, and religion driving decisions and driving policies, which is where it gets even more dangerous. And that's why we've, going back 100 years, you've got the Crusades, through Jerusalem, the English going down there based on, glory for God, because the heathen heathen Saracens, it's just two different religions, and it was conquering, what belonged where, based on religion. So those are the challenges that we have with religion, which unfortunately we see a lot more prevalent in today's society and used for not the right reasons and political gain and all sorts of things. But it can be divisive, and I understand that, and I understand that some people find it triggering, which is difficult. It's never the intent. It's also being able to have that healthy conversation. And when people are open to it, like you are, like I am, you can learn a lot from people. You can grow as a person. You can understand different people's perspectives. Sometimes you can have your own perspective changed, which is not always a bad thing. Sometimes you can change other people's perspectives if they're willing and open to have a conversation. To go full circle, I mentioned Australia Day at the top. Unfortunately, there's a dynamic where it's my way or our way, or you're different, therefore you're wrong. And it's very sad. It's very difficult, and it's very combative, as we see regularly in the news and in society at the moment. And I hope it'll change. I hope as new generations grow up and as society moves forward, I really hope that it changes and that people are open to different thought processes, different ideas. And what I love that you mentioned before is that how religion can bring people together and bring closeness, and that's a brilliant thing. And I think people who are different as well, why can't that bring people together at the same time? That openness to connect. I hope it happens.
Yeah, for sure. So as it relates to religion and politics, I don't know if abortion is as controversial in Australia as it is in the United States, but it is a hot button issue constantly in the United States. How is abortion regulated and in Australia?
It's not yet as hot a topic as over there. It nearly was here in Queensland. Similar to Australia, similar to America, there's different states have slightly different laws around it. It's much more pro-choice over here. Again, but you've got traditionalists that based on purely religion are against pro-choice and pro-life. Not as extreme as over there. I mean, obviously, you've seen lots of laws come into place. And in my personal opinion, horrific laws, where if a woman's raped, tough, you still got to have the kid, and that's wrong on so many levels, in my opinion. It's wrong on the woman, wrong on the individual, wrong on the child. Again, it comes back to why you have children. Tough, you barely have money to scrape by bills on a weekly basis, but still have that child, and raise that child in an environment which might not be suitable. But because it's because we don't believe abortion, that's what you should do. That's the right thing to do. To me, that's wrong on so many levels. And there are areas of Australia that would disagree with me on that. But I think the majority are very much pro-choice on that one, which personally I think is a good thing. I think, I'm definitely in that mindset that it's the woman's body. It's absolutely their choice. No one should decide what they should do. No man, no government. If even though my wife and I don't want kids, if she was to fall pregnant, we would have a discussion. It's her choice. I've always said that, not that I can't ever see this happen, but if I changed my mind and wanted kids, tough. If she changed her mind, I would have to think about it, because it's her body. No one, no institution, like I said, no man, no woman, no religion should tell a woman what to do with her body. It's so wrong on so many levels.
What do you think? I appreciate you sharing that. What do you think about a man that wants to have children and wants to? I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. So consensual. So it's a couple. Consensual sex.
Yep.
Conception happens. The woman doesn't want to keep the baby, but the man does and says, "Hey, I'll raise it. It's all on me." Do you think he should have a right to intervene there or no?
They've got a right to a discussion, but raising is just one part of it. His body isn't going through that. His body isn't ultimately probably changed for the rest of his life going through that. He's got a right to have a discussion, but it's her body, in my personal opinion. There's another sort of, I think, a precursor to this, that if you're in a relationship, if you're in a long-term relationship with someone, that discussion should be had very, very upfront.
True.
And to be honest, and it often doesn't. And I've known people who've been, dating for years and then engaged, and they go, "Oh, you don't want kids? Oh, how did we get here?" I'm like, "How did you get? Good question. How did you get there?"
That's the right question for sure.
Because you kind of should know this by now. Because at the end of the day, if you're in a relationship and he wants kids and she doesn't, you guys need to come together and get on the same page one way or the other. Either you decide, you know what, you are more important in my life than the desire to have children. Fine. But you need to be really, really, really at peace with that, because otherwise that could come back in resentment down the line. And that's not fair on the female in that example. Or, as much as you might love that individual, might have affection, great memories, if your desire to have children is so deep and so important to you, and respect to you for that, then that's not the right relationship for you. And it's that simple. It's tough. It's really difficult. I can imagine these conversations that happen, and they're heartbreaking, because you have this envision of this is the love of your life, but this is something that I really have to do. And you have to respect the other person for that. So in terms of that dynamic of one person, the female becoming pregnant and him going, I'll raise him, I'll raise the child, it's only half of it. He equally needs to go, I respect, they should have had the conversation beforehand, like I said, but he has to respect if she goes, no, I don't want to put my body through that. Okay. Shouldn't even be a conversation after that point.
Yep. And then so this is actually a Dave Chappelle joke. I find Dave Chappelle very funny, and I like people that are edgy. I'm very difficult to offend because I'm not judgmental. Like, I know what my flaws are. Sometimes someone will say to me, "You're a real jerk." I'm like, "That's true. I can be a real jerk." To be honest, I'm man. And so I find his humor funny because he's fearless. I like fearless in comedy. I don't always find it funny, but I appreciate the willingness to just do it. But his joke is, I as a man should be able to swear off all my parental rights, because if you can kill that kid, I sure as hell should be able to abandon him. Do you think men should be able to walk away if a woman becomes pregnant and say, hey, I absolve myself of all rights. I have no parental responsibility. I have no financial responsibility. if he doesn't have final say in the birth, should he at least have final say in his participation after birth? How do you think about that?
Great question. Really good question. There's so many layers to it because
right.
It's a great question. He can't have his cake and eat it because he can't go, well, I want to stay with you, but I don't want to have anything to do with the kid. Well, if she wants to have a child, it's going to be a package. And suddenly you are no longer the most important thing in the world. This child is going to be, and rightly so. So he's got a decision to make, and again, it comes down to the conversations. It comes down to the relationship process. You see many people have kids and they've been together for 6 months. That male in that person in that situation, yes, there is an element of you should have a responsibility to stick around. But if you're not emotionally capable, if you're not physically or financially capable, then that might do more damage than you not being around, if that makes sense. It's not black and white. These things unfortunately rarely are. Again, it's about thinking what's going to be best for the child. If I don't want this, if I'm going to try and be a father in a sense and really not be bought into it and actually kind of be a bit of a shitty father and kind of dip in and out, then actually probably going to cause more problems than not. Right. But if they're going to decide to walk away, they need to accept that one day, quite possibly, this child's going to want to find out who you are. And you need to have the maturity to be able to deal with that situation and say to another human being, yes, it was my decision to walk away because I wasn't capable to be a father at that point. And that's okay to say that, because someone who's 18, an 18-year-old boy at 18 probably isn't capable to be a father, hasn't got the life skills, And so is it right for them to stick around? It's a really tricky one, Jake. It's definitely not black and white. Do they have a right to go, I wash my hands of it? I think there's a way to do that, in terms of what's decent and what's morally right. It's a conversation of how much they want to be involved or not. And if they don't want to be involved, that's their decision. But it's what's right for everybody in the situation, the mother as well, the father, the child to be. Again, the child doesn't get a choice, unfortunately. And that often gets forgotten. Well, what about what's going to be best for the kid?
Yeah, they're interesting topics, and I'm with you. I think there's so much gray area. I think everyone needs to keep an open mind, have conversations with people, and work through those issues in a respectful way. And I totally respect and understand the people whose opinion is or belief is life starts at conception, and that is a sacred life, whether that be from a religious perspective or just from their own moral perspective. Like, it's a living being at the point conception happens, and that's not the woman's body. It is growing inside the woman's body for sure. There's no two ways about it. And that's one I don't understand when that became controversial, that only women can have children. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. This trans, what is it? I want to say it correctly. Trans men. Yeah, trans men can become pregnant. Yeah, those are women. That's why they have ovaries and wombs. I mean, I have no problem. I will call you by whatever name you choose. I will recognize you as whatever gender you choose. But when it comes to medical issues or those types of things, no, we can't kid ourselves on what's actually happening there. I don't know why that's controversial, but somehow we've muddied those waters, and I don't understand. Before you respond to that, Jack, just so we're pushing 300 viewers out there. Appreciate you guys checking out the live stream and sticking with us. If you want us to talk about a specific topic or respond to any comments, you can leave those right on our YouTube channel. We're happy to field those. Our producer will get those to us. But so I kind of steered the direction away from abortion to trans, Jack. So I'd love to hear your take on that, and I'd love to hear how it is in Australia, because I only have experience in the United States where I'm at. I don't know how that issue is in Australia, if it's as hotly contested or debated as it is here.
I think it's become less recently. because there's been so many other things going on. I think it's been mooted to a certain degree. I completely agree with you. A scientific fact is a scientific fact. If you have ovaries and a womb, that's, you either do or you don't. And I think, unfortunately, I said this to someone recently, the situation we find ourselves in the world right now with, you see extremism on the right side, and increasing archaic views on women, for example, is an equal and opposite reaction to years and years of extreme leftism. And I know there's a term that people use, the woke brigade, and the cancel culture that went on for years, but it's just a reaction to the other. And unfortunately, what's great about the forum that you've got now is people in the middle can have a conversation and go, because there is, and it does still exist, where someone can go, well, no, I actually disagree with a trans man, a trans woman. So someone who is originally biologically a man who has transitioned. I disagree with that person now entering a female swimming race. There are areas where if you say that, you are you're a bigot and you're sexist and da-da-da-da-da-da. But the crazy thing for me in that area is that it does, in some ways, women more harm, because this is men coming into women's sports, for example. And I actually heard a horrific example. I think it was in Scotland, where a man was going to be convicted for rape and he was transitioning. And so when he got convicted, he got sent to a women's prison.
Oh.
And I challenge anybody to explain to me why that's right.
Yeah, talk about a target-rich environment, huh? Holy moly.
And that's, again, it's where things become dangerous, where, no, I believe this is right above all else. Doesn't matter situation. And you have something like that happens. And you go, well, hang on, that's not right. That's dangerous and irrelevant to transition. That's what your biology is at the moment. And I've read some horrific stories of parents enabling kids as young as 13 to start looking at transitions and stuff. You don't know who you are at 13. Again, I love what you talked about belonging before, because I think belonging is so important. But you could be part of a friend group at 13 and a completely different one at 18. My wife and I were talking the other day. We've been married for way over 10 years. The wedding party we'd have now is probably completely different to the wedding party we had then.
Right?
Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
when you're a kid, when you're in your teens, you're learning about yourself. In your 20s, you're learning about yourself, who you are, your sexuality, where you belong, your belief system, all these sorts of things. And they can change depending on your exposure, things around you. So to have, again, unfortunately, similar to religion, parents' ideologies or beliefs put on their children, again, I think is really, really wrong, but therefore enabling them to make these huge life-changing decisions at an unbelievably young age they can't really come back from is really dangerous and unfair, and causes a lot of psychological harm. Again, similar to you, if this is your path, this is who you identify with, absolutely fine. If that's your truth, I respect that. Absolutely respect that. Equally, and again, this might be controversial, I've seen a lot of people interview people of a sort of trans nature, and the interviewer is using proper English, and they get pulled up and go, no, you can't say that. Well, it's proper English, so I can. I'm not being offensive to you, but I'm using my language. And again, I think it comes back to, because partly of social media, I think that's partly a problem. We as a society have a heightened sense of self-importance. Heightened sense of self-importance, where what I'm going through should be everyone in the world's problem. And it's not. Everyone's got problems, and they are equally as important. I've got clients that I deeply care about, and if they call me up at midnight, I'm there in a heartbeat. Because to be blunt, I give a shit. But unfortunately, these sorts of topics of my identity and who I am and what I am becomes less about what I believe and what I think everyone else should believe. And that comes back to the sense of self-importance, the social media, the fact that I can put a video on social media and talk about myself for an hour, and I should expect a million views because I'm that important. And we all go through similar things. But we all do similar things. We all go grocery shopping. We all shower. We are all human at the end of the day, and there are different challenges that we all occur. And yes, we've got to navigate those. But again, rather than seeking to understand, we often just challenge for the sake of challenging.
Yeah. And so, to me, it comes back to physiology, not reproductive physiology. It actually comes back to your brain. So none of us, so we're working off of averages here. So give or take a year, female brains become fully formed adult human brains at about the age 23. Male brains take a little longer because we're morons. And so we get there about 25. And look, there's no dispute, right? We're just morons. We just are. I always argue that it's actually women that screw up relationships because they get involved with us and expect us to change despite us giving them no evidence we're ever going to change. I'm going to be this stupid the rest of my life. I'm going to be this childish and sophomoric the rest of my life. That's how I am. I don't know why you expect me to change. I've never given you any indication I'm going to get smarter or more mature because I'm not. I'm an idiot. I'm a man. That's what we do. But because of that, we already, at least in the United States, we already legislate all sorts of activities that you are legally not allowed to do until you reach the age of 18. And we pick the age of 18 because you got to pick something. And that's the age you can vote. That's the age you can serve in the military. So if you're able to go fight and die for your country, you should have control over your life. Okay, got it. But we don't let people under 18 get tattoos. We don't let people under certain ages drive cars. They can't smoke. They can't drink. They can't sign legal contracts and commit to businesses. To say that someone at 12 years old knows what they want for the rest of their life sexually is just false. It's just false. I mean, look, I like boobs. I liked boobs when I was 12. I like boobs now. I'm a dude. That's what I like. But my thoughts and approach to sexuality are very different now as a 54-year-old man than they were as a 13-year-old horny little teenager, right? I mean, they're just different. And hopefully I've gotten a little bit better. I've got a little more game now than I had when I was 13 years old. But to allow people to make irreversible changes to their bodies, even with their parents' consent, is bad because parents' judgment is the most clouded when it comes to their children. Like it just is, because you can't get past the emotion and the bond you have with your children in many instances. So you can't see the forest for the trees. And even then, you may think you're doing what's best for your child because you care about your child. And you can't see that that's not best for your child. And I think that's a very slippery slope if we as a society allow these anatomy altering surgeries. By the way, I feel the same way about plastic surgery. I don't think you're going to be encouraging young ladies to get boob jobs or nose jobs or any cosmetic surgery before the age of 18. It's so unhealthy for them to place such a high premium on their physical appearance. We need to step in and say, hey, you are a good person. We like you the way you are. If you still feel the same way when you're 18, have at it. But we want you for you. That's the way you are is awesome. Keep it that way until you're old enough to decide on your own.
I completely agree. I disagree with a single point you said there, Joe. I think, these life-altering changes, and they are life-altering at that such a young age, can do so much damage. And how do we learn about ourselves, especially in those younger years, child years, teenage years, through, and some people may not like this term, but experimentation? Yeah. How do we learn that I can't do a 360 on a bike? I try it, I fall, it hurts like hell. Do you know what I mean? And that's sort of a lighter term. But that's how we learn, right? By experimentation. And experimentation means it's not permanent. You're trying things. You're and you should mention smoking, often to my generation, a lot of people went, oh, I want to try the smoking thing, and don't like it. So then you don't smoke. Some people obviously did. But, same thing. You grow by trying things and opening your mind up to the world. And I think a lot of decisions are made for younger generations so early and locked in, but also so protected, that when they go out into the world, they go, holy hell, what's this? I didn't know it was like this, because they're not exposed and they're not allowed to explore and still not work. And then they're starting to work themselves out, rather than having everything locked in and everything perfect, because there is a incredible fear of failure in society, in my judgment. And you live, and I'm a big believer. You live or you learn. You live and you learn. Failure is a great thing. I think I might have said this statement or a great saying from Gordon Ramsay when we last spoke, but it's one that's close to my heart, and it's one I big believe in. Is that adversity is a luxury that everyone should afford. And you should have it as early in your life as possible, and not because I'm evil and vindictive, but because it builds resilience. And he said, Gordon Ramsay says a great saying, which is, never fear the storm that's coming, get comfortable dancing in the rain. I love that. I love that visual as well. And the problem is we are so fear of failure that, well, if I leave this job and go for this one, what if it doesn't work out? I can't, no, so I'm going to stay. If I'm younger enough, I'm just going to do this course because it's okay. And it might not be what I want to do, but I'm going to do it because what if I fail that course that I really want to do? Can't risk that. We learn through failing. And therefore we get rid of that sense of failing, rid of that experience of failing, that we don't learn, we don't grow. And if you spread that across society, then we plateau. And then people aren't as resilient to day-to-day experiences. And that's a big risk.
Yeah, it's I always say experience is something you get right after you need it. And I personally have a ton of experience because I have fucked up a lot of stuff in my day. And like, try to get people to see that successful people have actually failed more than people, and that's why they're successful. So it's very similar to, if you actually want something really bad, the best way to get it is to not focus on it. It's actually to focus on the process by which you could get to that place. So if you want to be popular, the best way to be popular is to not try to be popular. It's just to be yourself.
Be authentic.
And, you know what I mean? Like, if you are who you are, people will white people too, by the way, will naturally gravitate towards you. And I hate to break it to you, but there's going to be people that don't like you. There's going to be people that don't agree with you. There's going to be people that are mean to you. Welcome to life. I don't know what to tell you. It's part of the experience. And I always say there's two kinds of people. The people that like me, the people over here don't. Both pretty long, but you got to pick one and get into it. It is what it is. I am who I am. And look, I'm a human being. I like to be popular. I like, people to like me. I like all of those things, but I'm not going to change who I am to enable that. And I think it's one of the reasons why I'm able to interact with and be friends with lots of different people come from lots of different walks of life, is because they know I'm telling the truth. And that's all they want. They just want to know you're truthfully and respect them. That's it. Like, if you just do those two things, you're going to be wildly popular. But we worry so much about screwing things up. It's better to screw things up. At least you're trying. At least you're learning. Don't think of it as failure. I tried this. The outcome I got. I don't like that outcome, so I'll try something different next time. Or I tried this. I love the outcome I got. I'm going to do this again. That's simple. We got to quit assigning value judgments to our outcomes.
Absolutely. And I think in the society of instant gratification, that's also another pillar to it. I want that win now. Well, life doesn't happen that way. You've got to learn, you've got to grow, you've got to go through that process rather than focusing on the outcome. Because yes, you might go from A, B, C, D, and you get to the star, but also you might go A, G, H, Z, then the star. Do you know what I mean? Depending on your journey. But through that journey, you go, oh, wow, I've explored and found that. And I really don't like that. I didn't know that about myself, but I love that. That's something else I'm going to do. And that's what's missing a lot of the time is, yes, it's a cliche saying, but it's a cliche saying for a reason. It isn't the destination, it's the journey. It's the journey, not the destination. And the destination can be great, but how you get there is the memory. I'll reference an example, it's an extreme one, but I mentioned Kilimanjaro earlier on. Getting to the summit was one of the best moments of my life. It would have meant nothing if the journey was easy. The journey was bloody difficult, Joe. It was like really tough. Wouldn't have felt an inch like we felt getting to that summit if it hadn't been.
A 17,000 foot mountain in the middle of Africa. It's hard.
It's hard, but I wouldn't have that immense sense of pride and that memory of going, what an experience, if it hadn't been hard. If it had just been easy and it's literally a stroll in the park, then you go, yay. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Versus we're at the top, we're smiling from ear to ear, tears are running down our face, freezing, literally as on our faces because it's so cold, going, can we bottle this moment because this is incredible? It doesn't happen if it's instant, if it's simple. You've got the journey makes it. The journey makes the experience. The tumble, the silly memories that you have when you try something and fail that you can later on laugh about and go, actually, in the moment, it didn't really matter. But also afterwards, it was great. It's experiences.
And a lot of times you don't even know that what you're experiencing is going to lead you somewhere good. It doesn't feel like it at the time, right? So, like I said, I went through college on a baseball scholarship. I actually played junior college for 2 years, which is like community college. And then I signed my scholarship from there. But I pitched my freshman year. I pitched against this team twice, and I lost both games 2-1. I pitched well. I didn't win either. And I got selected to play on this all-star team my sophomore year. Well, the guy that managed the team I played on was the opposing coach who I'd played against the year before. And he saw my name on the roster and said, hey, we beat that guy twice, but he's a good pitcher. I'm going to start him. I'd never met him before. Like, he shook my hand after the game and said, good job, son. That was it. But he started me, and this is an all-star game. So there was all these scouts from professional baseball teams and Division I colleges. I went out and threw 2 really good innings. And that night when I got home, I had 13 messages on – this was back in the early 90s before cell phones and all that. 13 messages on my answering machine from Division I schools and pro scouts, all because I lost 2 games the previous year to this guy. Like, and I was pissed. Like, I'm a competitor. Losing the game ruins my weekend. I never understood people that were in a good mood after they lost. Like, what the fuck? We lost. Did you not see what happened? Like, it literally ruined my weekend. That's how competitive I was. But here I am a year later, and it pays dividends because I put myself in good situations. I failed, not accomplish the goal I was trying to accomplish, but it still led me to a good spot because I wasn't afraid to take my shot. And I didn't quit because it didn't work the way I wanted it to.
Absolutely. And in previous lives where I've managed teams and hired teams such as you have, if I'm sat there with a candidate, I've got 2 candidates, one who's really experienced on their resume, and I sit with them, they go, I always win, and but I don't fail at anything, I don't make mistakes, and versus someone who's not very experienced and go, I'm always ready to make a shot, but I'll learn from everything. I'll fall down. If you want me to try something that I've never done before, I'll put my hand up and go, help. I need to learn, but I will grow with you. I'm hiring that person every single day of the week. Every single day of the week. Doesn't matter if they're fresh out of college versus someone who's 50. If that person is willing to fail and learn and be accountable and grow, they're gold dust. And if we can have more of that in the world, it'd be a better place.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Like a lot of these topics that are hotly debated now, it strikes me what a good place we are in the world when we can argue about pronouns, because those aren't real problems. Got it. You might feel one way or be offended or whatever. That's not a real problem. Even 200 years ago, people didn't get their crops in the ground in the spring, they were going to starve to death in the winter.
That's a real problem.
That's a real problem. If there was a war that was going on, and war used to proliferate the globe, for centuries, and you die in war, that's a real problem. And we now have the leisure, the luxury of debating things like they, them, or abortion, or religion, or whatever. Doesn't matter what it is. Those aren't real problems. They're interesting conversations, and I enjoy having those conversations with people. But I always try to filter things. I'm sure you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah. So for those that aren't, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Abraham Maslow, psychologist, 40s, 50s, if I remember right, and he developed a pyramid called the hierarchy of needs. And you start at the bottom, and you can't move to the next level of the pyramid until you satisfy the needs at the level that you're at. And the first level is literally, do I have oxygen? Am I safe? Is something trying to kill me? Am I warm enough so I'm not going to freeze to death tonight? That's level one. And that's where I think a lot of people go wrong, is they see people do desperate things. They don't realize that person feels like they're at level one, has those hierarchy of needs. And we've either got to provide them the safety or security they need, or help them see that they're better off than they are. But if you think about it from that perspective, it'll help you deal with what you encounter in life. Think about it from their perspective. It goes back to our conversation earlier. Walk me through how we got here. Walk me through the decision-making process so I can help you solve this problem. And if you think about it that way, you're going to have much better relationships with people personally and professionally than imposing your viewpoint or imposing your judgment on a set of circumstances. You may not have all the information.
Seek to understand, because you might learn something. And even if you don't learn something, you might be able to approach that situation a completely different way that opens up both parties' eyes.
Yeah. So just a little bit off the cuff, the Olympics are coming. Are there any big Olympic hopes to keep an eye on from Australia?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. I'm not going to lie, Joe. The unfortunate thing is that the only I guess exposure or topic of the Olympics that has recently come up is unfortunately of ICE agents going over there. So that's the mainstream subject that's been talked about over here. In terms of Olympians, it's not something I'm familiar. Well, in terms of specific Olympians, it's not something I'm very familiar with. I couldn't, even though I'm from the UK, I couldn't tell you UK athletes. I couldn't tell you Australians, unfortunately. I'm incredibly naive. It's interesting. When I was a kid, I used to follow the Olympics a lot.
Me too.
The magic of the rings and the torch. And I remember, what was the British Olympian? For some reason, Jonathan Edwards, who was a British triple jumper, sticks in my head. I remember watching him as a kid and seeing him break a world record. And, these athletes when you're a kid. As an adult, I can't remember the last time I watched the Olympics. I probably should take more attention, especially because 2030, we've got the Olympics here in Brisbane, in Australia. So then I'm going to really have to take a lot of notice.
Yeah, the Winter Olympics coming up in February are in Italy.
That's right.
And then the 28 Summer Olympics are in Los Angeles. And so Los Angeles is going through some tough times. There's a lot of homelessness. There's a lot of kind of open drug use. And they're desperately – and then the World Cup played in the United States, some of it in Los Angeles as well. And so they're desperately trying to clean that city up. And I saw a story on it the other day. There's graffiti all over Los Angeles, and they're trying to prevent more graffiti. So if you paint it, someone's going to come by and tag it the next day. So they went out and got this fake ivy, and they put it on the wall that was covered with graffiti. The very next day, someone painted graffiti all over the fake ivy. It's hilarious.
Yes, they haven't quite worked that out, have they?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Is the immigration and ICE issue big news? The American immigration and ICE issue a big news in Australia right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's driven by social media, but it's a big topic here that I often have discussions with friends, colleagues, family members about, because it is a big, what's going on over there is very alarming. And yes, people are going to have different opinions on it. I personally just look at history, and it's very, from my perspective, it's terrifying, the similarities between now in the US and 1930s Germany. I know that gets thrown around a lot, but you look at the facts, it is very alarming what's going on in terms of the similarities and what's been going on. And again, different opinions, and this is where it can be divisive. You can't have a debate. You know, you look at scenarios of someone getting shot, and you go, well, this is what I see. They were holding a phone. No, they were holding a weapon. Okay, well, where do you want me to go with that? And you can't have a debate. You can't have a discussion, because it's like that extreme religion we were talking about before. It is so driven by agenda, so driven by a belief system that you are right or wrong. And that's that.
Yeah.
And there it is. And the problem is sometimes, I'm sure there are people who are listening to this go, well, you know, you're Australia, you know, it's none of your business. And unfortunately, you're quite an important country. So what happens in the US? Well, there's two things. Firstly, what happens in the US always has an effect on the global network. But also, again, because I do compare it to 1930s Germany, and you look back in the history books and you speak to any Austrian Germans or Germans around that time, and the neighboring countries, and even Great Britain. And the biggest regret they say is we did nothing. We saw it and we stood back and went, it's not our country, not our problem. We did nothing. We didn't say anything. The biggest mistake is doing nothing and saying nothing. And yes, it's got to be done the right way. And I'm sorry if that offends people who think that because I'm in Australia, I don't have a right or to have an opinion. But this is such a big issue, and it is on a global scale. You know, we've seen subjects such as Greenland and Venezuela. There is expansion, and now going over to Italy. God knows what's going to happen there. That every human being has a right to an opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, the whole narrative that if you don't have experience, you don't have an opinion. So, like, with that logic, if you had cancer, the only doctor that you want to treat you would have also had cancer. Not a doctor who had been trained in oncology and could cure your cancer, regardless of whether they've experienced or not, but trained in the proper techniques, the most up-to-date techniques to cure your cancer. No, get rid of them. Make sure I got someone who's had cancer, because they're the one that really should be handled with. Like, it's such a terrible thought process in my mind.
It is, and unfortunately, there is an incredible amount of hypocrisy that goes on, and it's to the, because I think it's very much, if you're in the bubble, it's one thing. If you're outside the bubble, you can see in, and physically being outside the bubble in Australia, but also the outside world, we're all screaming, going, "How do you guys not see this?" You know, we are all screaming, going, "This is literally nuts." That this, you know, you have, you know, I can see this with my own eyes. This is a fact. This is what happens. And then you have someone standing up and going, "No, this is what it is," and then millions of people going, "Okay, that's fine." When a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever, completely different thing was said. And that's just, you know, you can read into that example if you, whatever you like, but it's constant and it's daily. It is literally daily right now. It's also exhausting for the world. You know, and I've got some clients over there, and anytime I speak to them, I can see how wearing it is on them. And I have so much sympathy for the good people, because there are millions of good people around the world. Funnily enough, there are. But I've got so much sympathy with, you know, good people over in the US that are just exhausted by it.
Yeah, you can't get away from it. And from my perspective, nobody's right. Everybody's wrong. This is one of the few instances where everybody is wrong. ICE is doing things extremely heavy-handedly. They're doing it largely for show, largely for performance, and they're 100% trampling on people's rights in many instances. Like, there's way too many of those situations and circumstances happening. With that said, we need to defend our borders and enforce our laws. I think there's a much better way to do it than the way that we're doing it now. And your opposition to that does not involve assaulting law officers, inserting yourself in the actions of law officers and rioting, which is what's going on in many of. It's largely confined to Minneapolis at this point, but you don't your rights guaranteed by our Constitution do not include assaulting law officers, do not include impeding traffic, do not include attacking people and assaulting them. They just don't. And
No.
that's not the solution either. So to your point, because I think there's a small but very emotional, very loud minority on each side that are polar opposites, that are drowning out the ability to have a reasonable conversation and say, "Hey, time out. What the fuck are we doing? Let's figure this out. We look like idiots, and we're doing really bad things here all the way around." That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and I mean, as I alluded to before, every action has an equal opposite reaction. So society, again, it comes back to belonging. If you have what is perceived to be a tyrannical government coming in being heavy-handed, you're frustrated, and there's a very easy mindset to get into of fight fire with fire. We have to protect our loved ones. We've got to protect our neighborhood. We've got to protect our city. So you're coming in force, so we're going to meet you with force. And I get it. I can't say that in that situation I wouldn't do the same. I can't sit here and honestly go, I wouldn't do the same.
Sure.
You protect if someone's coming and knocking on the door, you're not going to protect your home. Of course you are. Of course you are. And your loved ones. It's how it's weaponized. The subject immigration it's how it's weaponized. And I think, and how it's used and enforced. And there's so many different ways of going, okay, we need to put better border protection involved, scan people, all those sorts of things, which is fine. That's every country does that. This is different. And it's shown to be different in the cases of, minorities being targeted, nothing to do with immigration. I mean, I'm coming to the US later this year, briefly, albeit, and there is an element of myself being concerned because I'm not a national, I'm not white. Okay, I'm obviously of a complexion. I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine, but I will be aware of what's going on because of what's been created there. It's a completely different rollout if government goes, we're going to work with the local governments, with the state governments, and with the people. Completely different. They've gone in the direction of very hard hitting, as you said. We're going to come in with a military force. It's going to get a reaction. Of course it is. And there is a right to protest. But when you are seeing your neighbors and your fellow human beings be treated so abhorrently, so illegally, I understand why there's an uproar. And it's from my perspective, and I think for a lot of people's perspective outside that bubble, it's so obviously a powder keg over there. It's so close to erupting in certain parts of the country. It's very, very concerning because there are these two extraordinarily opposing factors, and no one is allowed to have a conversation in between. You and I aren't allowed to have a conversation in between and go, well, actually, there might be an immigration problem, and we need to deal with this in a different way. But because you say there's an immigration problem, you're that way. Do you know what I mean? You and I aren't allowed to have that conversation. We're not allowed to have the conversation to go, actually, how they're behaving is similar to the Gestapo. And there are similarities to that. And there are similarities to the SS, because then you're that way. Do you know what I mean? You're not allowed to be in the middle. And in the middle is where you can have good conversations with, and you can find, I would like to think, common sense and go, what do we want to get out of this? Because two opposing factors are only going to end up one way, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, for what it's worth, from my perspective, I don't think we're anywhere near like a civil war or anything like that taking place. You touched on one thing that I think is what we do need local state officials to cooperate with federal officials. And that's one of the reasons why there's been this confrontation, is that in some cities, they refuse to work with federal law enforcement to turn over people who have already been arrested for a crime, who are in the country illegally, to the federal law so that they can deport them. And that's a bad choice. It's bad leadership. It's not a good approach. Now, with all that said, there is a way to go in, and this has been going on for decades, by the way, where ICE mostly ICE, the Department of Homeland Security is pretty new, but mostly ICE has been going out into communities, targeting specific illegal who have committed heinous crimes either in their country or our country, and apprehending them and deporting them.
Which I completely understand. But
Yeah,
when you see a 3-year-old boy being detained, for example, why? What threat is that?
No, totally with you. That's exactly where I was going. The way ICE is handling it is largely performative, and then any instance that can be magnified to make it look worse gets immediately criticized and put out. So my point is, like the instance you're talking about, is a 5-year-old kid, and the circumstances under which he got out of ICE custody are hotly debated, all sides involved. But it's a terrible look. Like, it's a terrible, terrible look. There's no reason to put ourselves in that situation or to put that kid in. Could have been handle those situations much differently, but no one will just let common sense, like you said, to take over and go, hey, what the fuck are we doing here? Let's take a beat and figure out how to do this in a productive way. What are we doing?
And a smart way, an educated way, and a trained way, because it's, again, from the outside, from what I've seen, it is clear that a lot of these individuals, these agents, are not trained. It is clear they do not have the, we talk about emotional intelligence, we touched on that, the emotional intelligence to de-escalate a situation, to manage high emotional scenarios. They don't have the training or the ability.
Yeah.
So, and why are they going into it? Why do they want to become an ICE agent? Is that ever asked? Because, again, this is where people's agendas come into play. There's a lot of them that seem to be heavily masculine, wanting to throw their weight around. It's about power and authority, and I've got all the gear and I'm all the, but it's literally all the gear, no idea.
I got picked on in high school. Now you're going to pick. Yeah.
So they've created a situation. You're right. How they handle many situations is abhorrent, but that's going to get a reaction.
Yeah.
Because it comes down to trust. Local governments aren't going to trust you if you are shown to continue to do these behaviors. So yes, you might want this one of individual that should be deported because of illegal, heinous crimes and they're bad for society. But if we open that door for that person, who else are you going to go after and do? So I get both elements to it, but I don't know the solution. I'm not smart enough to come up with a solution. It's not just going to be one thing. It's a much bigger picture. It's much bigger changes. More people going, hang on, how we've approached this is wrong. We need to get people on side. We need to get, there's a famous, I can't remember the film, but they say in the film, people shouldn't be afraid of their government. Government should be afraid of their people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you have the right to bear arms, for example.
That's exactly.
That's the reason you guys have it. I may agree with it or not. That's slightly different. But that's why you guys have it. But you're currently living in a or the perception is anyway, in a environment and a government where people are terrified of the government and what's going to happen next and what's going to be coming down and what's next day. And that's not the right dynamic.
Yeah.
A government should be there to look after their whole people. The same as a company. Business is no different. If you are the CEO of a business, your responsibility is to grow that business so it continues to grow and continues to succeed for the benefit of the business and the people involved in that business. That is your responsibility. And it comes with leadership. Leadership is not a badge of honor. you can be proud of it, but it is a responsibility to the people you lead. And that's whether you've got a small team of 5 in a little design studio or a whole nation of a government. It is a responsibility to everybody, whether they're of different color, creed, race, religion, doesn't matter. You're responsible for everyone, not ostracizing half of them because of your beliefs.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's exactly right. And we've lost the plot a little bit. Everybody step back, take a breath, have rational conversations with each other, and figure out a solution that both complies with our laws and our ethics. Like, they both matter, you know?
And the problem is that conversation's being squashed. I know people around the world who are incredibly intelligent people and with some of the biggest hearts and most giving of individuals. But on certain topics around this, it's can't. Not possible. It's, you don't understand, you're wrong. Would you like to discuss it? Would you like to have a different opinion? Nope, you're wrong. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. But like you were talking about ICE agents, that's the problem with them, is they're human beings, and I agree with you on training. I agree with you on everything you said. The challenge is anytime you've got human beings involved, you just, they can be unpredictable. You just don't know until you put them in that situation and see how they react.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. That's why 2 things are so vital. It's what's the intent, and do they have the training and the ability to execute that intent?
Yeah.
If those 2 things are off, then you're going to create problems at the end of the day.
Yeah, we've got a comment here. I'm just looking for it. For some reason my comments aren't coming up. We'll see if we can get that comment from James.
Yeah,
see if we can respond to it. But yeah, I appreciate you being able to share, because here inside, yeah. So the question is, how much does the news play with our perception? I think that's a great question.
Brilliant question. It's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to
Go ahead.
take it?
Fire away, because you can hear me run my mouth all day long.
I think it's huge. I think the news is many ways broken. The news used to, in some ways, I'm a romanticist when it comes to the news. The news used to be, and we're talking decades now, a source of truth where the news was factual based. We're going to deliver what's going on to you today live in Wisconsin or Sydney or whatever it might be. So you are aware and you are more informed, and therefore you are informed to make your own decision. Now, news is more of a entertainment, and this is our opinion and our perception, and we're going to tell you what to think, which is very different. And depending on what news you dial into, you can get 2 different views, or 4 different views, or 3, or whatever it might be. So I think it's huge. I think it's morally wrong, ethically wrong, because I think journalism and the news, whether it's newspapers, social media, official social media, I'm talking, or news networks, television networks, they have once again a responsibility to be impartial, and that's gone. And I don't know if it's ever possible to come back.
Yeah,
because too many, whether it's coming from higher up or it's whether they're individuals who are writing articles, it's their opinion, and therefore, if you dial into this show, you must be of this persuasion politically, or this persuasion politically. And it's far more about entertainment and clicks and likes and controversialism versus we're going to deliver you the facts. You as a society can make the decision of what you think of them or not. But we have a responsibility to give you that facts.
Yeah, and just the facts. Like, everyone has to insert an opinion, regardless of that opinion. I think that story about the 5-year-old that wound up in ICE custody is a good example of it. Yes, it's a terrible optic. There's no 2 ways about it. However, depending on which news source you listen to, there was 2 versions of that story. The first one was ICE detained a 5-year-old and used him as bait to try to get his mother to come out of the house so they could detain her. If you listen to MSNBC, whatever the hell they call it now, CNN, any left that was the version of events that you were told. If you listen to Fox or any right wing on the other side, the dad was coming home with his son from daycare, preschool, wherever. He picked his kid up. And when he got home, ICE was there to detain him. He ran, abandoning his 5-year-old. ICE tried to give the kid to the mother. She wouldn't open the door because she didn't want to get it. So ICE wound up with it. Now, both of those are two very different versions of an event that happened. And I wasn't there. I don't know which one is true, which one is false. But the fact that we could have what are supposed to be us reporting the news, which is news clear facts.
Yeah.
If I want to watch an opinion show, fine. This is an opinion show. Like,
100%.
Yeah, people are listening to me. You can say this guy's full of shit. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Duly noted. You can very well be right. I am full of shit on a lot of stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about on a lot of stuff. Fair enough. I'll give Jack more credit than me, but I can be myself. I can be a dumbass sometimes. No two ways about
it. So can I sometimes. You're right.
And the news is supposed to be facts. Just give us the facts and don't tell us what to think or how to feel. Give us the facts.
100%. And the news should also be there to hold people, governments, companies to account.
Yes.
And one of the foundations of fascism is owning the news and owning the narrative.
That's right.
If anyone looks through the history books of fascism regimes, it's controlling the narrative, controlling the news, and making sure their message comes out through the news.
And take the guns.
Exactly. 100%. Whereas traditional reporting, traditional journalism is fact-based. It is holding people to account. It's holding governments to account. Again, comes back to, people should not fear their governments. Governments should fear their people because they know the facts. And therefore, if the news is reporting factual-based information, then the people can make a judgment if it's a democracy, for example, and vote for the government that they choose based on facts, not what news outlet is politically led for whatever reason. I'm going to change your vote that way. So
there's a great example of holding government to account, and it's the age of the U.S. president. We've had two very good examples back to back. So anyone that was being honest could look at Joe Biden and see the huge mental decline that he was experiencing, not only through his presidency, but before he got elected. And people rightfully were outraged that not only did the news refuse to report on it, they painted a completely different narrative and just swallowed hook, line, and sinker all the propaganda that came out of the White House. Those were very fair criticisms, and they should have been criticisms. But fast forward now to Donald Trump in office, he's clearly more what's the word I'm looking for? He has more vitality than Joe Biden, and it's clear that he's more cognizant than Joe Biden. But he's in his 80s. Those are very fair questions to ask. The same questions are very fair questions to ask of the new president. And if you were pushing for those to be asked of the old president, you should be pushing for those to be asked of the new president. It shouldn't matter who's sitting in the chair. I have different, I don't have nearly as many concerns about Trump as I did because it was so obvious on Biden, and my wife's grandmother and my father-in-law are experiencing issues with dementia. So I know what it looks like. Like, I don't have to guess. I know. And it looks like Joe Biden. That's what it looks like, by the way. You hear Trump inserting wrong words and stuttering and stammering. Those are fair questions. The guy's in his 80s. Maybe it's just Trump being Trump. Maybe he's starting to lose it. We should know, though, either way.
And they are fair questions to ask, and it was wrong. I think it was wrong of Democrats to put Biden in that position. I actually felt a lot of sympathy for the guy. He should have removed himself earlier on, but again, that's the self-awareness. But another great example of journalistic duty to keeping a government account, and you want to go through about the years, is Nixon and Watergate.
Oh yeah,
it's a great example. It's a very famous one, but that was investigative journalism uncovering corruption within a government that was called out to the people, and that person who was found to be unfit for a very important role, funnily enough, the head of state, to be effectively, I mean, he left on his own accord, but effectively removed from office, right? Because he was held to account. That doesn't happen now because it's no longer fact, it's an opinion.
Yes.
Which is incredibly dangerous, and that's where people of power, anyone of power, can get away with anything because it's no longer a fact, because it's fake news or it's your opinion, and I can tell you it's wrong. So you don't have that journalistic autonomy, journalistic honesty, integrity anymore.
Yeah.
Because that, I believe, should be the core of good journalism, should be the core of news, whether it's newspapers going back the years, the big spreadsheets, or news that we consume on YouTube or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that when I think about it, it goes back to like the 24-hour news cycle that CNN created when it first started, right? It used to be, I think Ted Turner started CNN, if I remember right. And for a while there, it worked really good, but then I was like, shit, we got to have something to talk about 24 hours a day. What are we talking about? And it stopped just being news and started getting filled with commentary and opinions. And like, I get it, but there needs to be some version where it's just facts, or at least you can trust what year. That's we try to present things honestly as we're capable. Like, I'm not a journalist, and I'm certainly not without bias. I think I know where most of my bias is. That doesn't mean I'm controlling that all the time. And I try to freely acknowledge, hey, you can be biased on this for these reasons, and here's what I know. But like, that's the job. Like, I umpired baseball a lot, and I always told people, like, there's only two calls. It's a ball or a strike. There's no third call. Almost, that's a ball. Oh, almost, yeah, that's ball too. There's no almost. There's no almost strike in the book. Like, there's only one of two ways, and that's journalism should be in news should be calling balls and strikes, not color commentary on how great the pitcher's motion looked or how hot the hitter's been lately. Was it a ball? Or was it a strike? We'll take it from there.
Completely agree. And it's when, and I'm sure this happens in multitude different industries and definitely multitude different governments, but it's when ratings and business supersedes, you can say, honor, integrity, right and wrong, truth. I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of the 24-hour news. And I think it was sort of, I don't know if the film Anchorman 2, I think they sort of glorified it in terms of, that creation. It was a sort of comedy movie that came out years ago. But it's where sort of, watching a chase is more entertaining. It's about entertainment, not news. But that comes back to responsibility. If I choose to go down a career path of becoming a doctor or a nurse or a lawyer, I'm choosing that because I'm acutely aware that if I'm successful in that role, if I succeed in getting that role, I will have an acute responsibility in that role to have duty of care for my patients, for my clients, same as I do as a coach. Now I have a duty of care. That's a responsibility. It's not me pushing my agenda or
right.
looking for clicks or looking for hits. And that's where the blurred lines happen. With news specifically, because it's not about journalistic integrity. It's who can get the quickest hits, who can get the story first. I get the competitiveness. Absolutely. That used to be, who can get the scoop, but it's who can make something most controversial. So we get the most TikTok likes or clicks or what it might be it's business. It's money led versus what should actually be the core of this, using a lawyer, for example, if I want to become a defense attorney, what should my motivation be? Should it be money or should it be truth? It should be truth. And I actually had a conversation with a client recently about this, similar terms of leadership. They've got a mid-level leader and it's probably not capable to be a leader, in my opinion. who thinks they should be higher, and they're looking to employ someone higher. And she was asking me how she's going to navigate that conversation with that mid-level individual, because he's not going to be successful going for this role, and she's worried he might leave. And I asked her, I said, ask him why he wants the role, because that's going to tell you everything. Because what he's going to say, having learned a little bit about this individual, is that he thinks he deserves it. He thinks he's been running the show already, because he wants to take more on, and he's not going to say anything about people. He's not going to say anything about giving a damn about the team, wanting to see them grow, wanting to see them develop. And that's going to tell you in one simple sentence that he's not right for the role, because he doesn't want the responsibility. And it's responsibility of, if I'm myself as a coach, if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, a dentist, nurse, if you're a journalist, you have a responsibility. And that, unfortunately, I think has gone.
Yeah, I don't know why that's a difficult concept, but it seems to be an exceedingly difficult concept for a lot of people to grasp these days. And there needs to be some way to, especially in the age of AI. It's crazy with all the AI stuff out there now. It's so hard to figure out what's actually real and what's not. It's getting harder.
Yeah, it's getting scary. I saw actually one popped on my Instagram recently. Someone made a trailer, a movie trailer on AI. It's going around social media at the moment. And fully AI, and it's got, I think, The Rock in it, and Timothy Chalamet, and Sydney Sweeney, I think. And you watch it without the tagline of "This is AI," and you go, "What's this new movie? Where's this come from?" Because it's very different, unless you're kind of squinting. Bless her, my wife got very angry recently because it was a social media reel or whatever of animals. She was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And then she read the tagline, "Created with AI." And she was furious. She was like, "I can't believe this has ruined it. I thought that was lovely, and it made me feel warm and gooey inside."
Right.
Killed it for me. So I think personally, truth is something that we should protect more than we do, because we're losing it very, very quickly. Whether it's societal divisions, you're right, I'm wrong, that's true, that's false, that's it, or news, social media, what we consume, or, as you rightly say, AI. The perception of what's real or what's not, what's true and what's false, is becoming really blurred. And with that comes a lot of dangers in itself.
Yeah. Well, Jack, look, I really appreciate you joining us tonight. I know it's Friday morning in Australia, and I know you've got stuff to get going to do, but really enjoyed it. We're on the roster now so that we can bring you back on a live stream somewhere down the road. For the audience, Salty Ginger Talk every Thursday night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We'll be doing the live stream. We take comments. It's just an open conversation between me and an awesome person that I've met through the podcast. Jack was good enough to join us tonight. By the way, if you're in need of coaching, business coaching, Jack's business, although he's in Australia, worldwide, he's already got clients in the United States. It doesn't matter where you are. So if you do need business coaching, you can go to his website. Just Google him, Glennon Peak Coaching. It'll take you right to his website. Jack, thanks so much. Until next time, buddy. Talk to you later.
My pleasure, mate. Lovely to see you. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Take care. All right, guys. So thanks for checking out the live stream again every Thursday night from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. My apologies there. I clicked the wrong button. I kicked myself out of the live stream. Every Thursday night, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're gonna have an awesome guest like Jack that we just had last week. It was Ayush. We were lining up the people for upcoming weeks. We will take questions. We will discuss topics that come into us from the audience. Love hearing comments, love hearing your opinions and perspectives on things. So make sure that you communicate through the comments with us. Our producer can feed those to us live through the live stream. Make sure you go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. You can subscribe to our podcast there. All of our podcast episodes are available on our website, saltygingertalk.com. We've got a newsletter we publish every weekday. We've got all our links to our social media accounts available there. And look, we have awesome guests. We do 4 episodes a week now that we've moved to a live stream. All of it's meant to help you understand the world better, live the life that you want, take control of your situation. That's what we're all about at Salty Ginger Talk. We want people thinking critically, deciding how they want to live their life, and then pursuing that goal with as much effort and as much focus and as much intensity as possible. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Really appreciate you checking us out. Until the next live stream, you guys have a great week. If you're in the United States, try to stay warm. It's cold everywhere, but do your best to stay warm, and we will see you next week.